Thank you very much, everybody, for attending and signing up to this first Club Masterclass. This is a new series of monthly interactive online forums that we're going to have with expert volunteers from rowing clubs around the country. Each forum, each class will cover a particular topic relevant to running clubs, and they will build on the case studies that are available in the club guides. And the club guides can be found under the knowledge section on the British Rowing website and selecting the community support website. I just want to remind people, even though you've agreed as you came along, this session is being recorded and will be made available later on the website. For those people who don't know, I am Paul Lorenzato. I am Head of Community Support, and I'm joined this evening by three club volunteers, our expert panel: Richard Berkley from Goring Gap, Matt Pooley from the Lea Rowing Club, and Simon Reeves from Trafford Rowing Club. Richard is the captain of rowing at Goring Gap. Matt Pooley is the current captain at the Lea Rowing Club, and Simon is a past captain and chair of Trafford and is also a member of the British Rowing Board. Goring Goring Gap Rowing Club is in the Thames region and is situated on the Thames between Streatley and Pangbourne, and it has a membership of 200 plus. The Lea Rowing Club is in the Eastern region, even though it's in Hackney in London, and it rows on the Lea navigation and has a membership of 500 plus. And Trafford Rowing Club is in the Northwest region and rows on the Bridge Canal and has a membership of 200 plus. One of the things I found quite interesting when I was researching these clubs is that under their present names, and I do stress their present names, they were all formed in the 20th century. Goring Gap, 1988. The Lea, 1980, and the oldest, Trafford, in 1957. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening for this discussion. Can you all hear me? Simon, Richard, Matt?
Yes,
yeah, brilliant. My first question to kick this discussion off is to you, Richard. Richard, you are a member of a rowing club that is a recreational rowing club.
Correct.
Why? Why a recreational rowing club? Where did that demand, or where did you identify that demand from to form a purely recreational rowing club?
Oh, well, good evening all. Like many clubs, the club was started by 5 guys looking to take their singles out and looking for somewhere to boat, and it grew from there. I think the reason we've evolved to the club we are is because from the very beginning, the ethos of the club was to be inclusive of all sorts of rowers, whether they be accomplished rowers having rowed at high levels or complete beginners. And we have retained that ethos right the way through. It's our underlying rule for the club. So we are a really broad church. Of our 200 members. We have members that have rowed in international boats, but equally we have members that have come along in the last year, decided that they just want to try rowing for rowing's sake. They don't have the time to commit to being in a squad. In fact, we don't use the word squads. We prefer to use the word pods, because we have groups of people at different levels, but they want to, they're willing to start a learn to row course, but they want to feel that they can row beyond that. And we have worked very hard at trying to give them the opportunity to carry on rowing at a level and in a time constraint that they can commit to. And I think that we have a lot of members coming in saying that they have rowed previously at university or school, and they want to take it up again in their 30s or 40s. But they've been to other clubs, and by other clubs, I don't mean other local clubs. We have people coming out from the centre of London. We have people coming from Southampton, from all over the place. But when they've gone to other clubs, the first questions they've been asked is, well, what level have you rowed at before and how much you can commit to? And the reason they end up on our doorstep is that they haven't got the time to commit to 2-3 times a week. At Goring, they can come whenever they want. And there's a lot of time that goes into organising those people that come along once or twice a week, which I can touch upon later.
Okay. Sorry, I meant to say to everybody that's listening, if you've got a question, please put it in the chat or raise your hand and we will get to your question. Sorry, I do apologise for not saying that earlier on. Matt, there's the Lea Rowing Club, 500 plus members, rich racing history, makes a Henley final in last year. But you offer so much more. How did you identify this more than we're just a racing club?
I mean, I think it's partly been in our DNA since we were founded as the Lea, because we've 5 clubs came together, all slightly different, all catering to slightly different groups of people. The sort of feeling I think at the time was we're better off together. Sharing, coming together, supporting one another. We're more likely to all achieve what we want to achieve, and I think that philosophy is kind of carried on through. We have grown a lot since. We now not only offer racing, performance rowing, send people off to Henley, we also have a massive recreational side of the club. I think 150 plus rec members at the last count. We offer a big band of sort of racing to, I'm going to say, less committed people that can't commit to sort of performance Henley training program that we don't want to just turn away. And in fact, those people are a big sort of part of the volunteer base that keeps the club going. I think, to be honest with you, it's a sort of, why wouldn't you try and offer everything that you can to everyone in your community? I mean, we're sort of unique, I suppose, in London in that we have quite a big catchment. We're the only open club really in our area. So we do need to try and offer all the kinds of rowing that people in East London might want, or are part of East London. But it's a big thing. I think that maybe the thing that gave us a kick, perhaps, if you look back 10 years ago now, it was the Olympics, which was on our patch. In fact, our stretch of canal goes past the Olympic Stadium. I think there was a sort of big surge of interest in the sport at that time, of course, and in us, because people turned around and said, oh, they're right here. And at that point, I think that's when we really kicked off the growth of our rec section, and it's flourished ever since.
Brilliant. We'll come back to your campaigns along the towpath, which I think is a great move. Simon, there you are. You've got a rowing club in the height of the pandemic, and you've bucked the trend on a lot of clubs, where a lot of clubs are desperately trying to hold their membership, retain their members and all the rest of it. Your club's actually grown. How have you done it?
Well, we managed to retain most of our members throughout by just regular communication. WhatsApp groups flourished. Some of the jokes and videos that appeared on there were illuminating, but again, it kept the ethos of the club going. We also ran, for the June, we ran virtual erg sessions, but we also ran for the juniors a coaching course, so that they could learn all the basics of coaching, which they're now going to start using, because when we start going on to the summer session, they'll put those to the test and see how they go. That obviously helped us retain the core of the club. But one thing we noticed during lockdown and the various restrictions as they eased, the towpath, which goes past our club, or past our boathouse, became very busy at all times of the day with cyclists, walkers, people exercising. So I think we spent, I probably underestimated it before, I think we spent £40 on 2 UPVC vinyl banners, which simply said Trafford Rowing Club, come and learn to row, contact with an email address. And on the back of that, we had 500 people apply for row start courses over the summer. And it meant that we ran courses from the start of June through until the end of September. I think virtually every hour of the day was a row start course. And we had over 200 people go through a mix of 50% adults, 50% juniors. And we then had a 40% conversion rate of those joining the club. And that's how we did it. And on the back of that, I regret to say that we didn't do a taster session for this year's Olympics, but then we physically couldn't have accommodated anybody out of that, because at the moment, the club at the moment quite often is like Clapham Junction, as a boat comes in, somebody else will hop into it to start a session. So yeah, it's a great place to be. It's great. We've got a great community going. Everybody's in, the new members feel part of the club, and more importantly, as we enter the colder parts of the year, we've still got those people rowing. So yeah, that's how we did it.
Sounds amazing. Could I ask, and this is a question off the back of what you've just said. You got a 40% conversion rate from those learn to rows, learn to rows, whatever you. Did you by any chance ask the people who didn't come back why they didn't come back? Was it they just wanted to give rowing a try and that was what you accommodated, or was there something else? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with your course by any means. I'm just asking the question.
A lot of the juniors who do it in the summer, we acknowledge it's effectively babysitting. It's parents looking for activities to keep their children occupied over the long summer holidays whilst they're at work, which we've always acknowledged, and we're happy to take the money and happy to make them enjoy it. But in terms of the wider feedback, again, they enjoyed it, but it's the time commitment. They enjoyed it, but they're doing other sports which they're party to. Now's not the right time. Several have got some longer term injuries, which rowing helped them, but they didn't be able to sort of accommodate. So there's no. I think there were very few who hated it, and again, where they were uncomfortable in a larger group, we immediately would take them out of it and try and work with them individually, one-to-one, just to sort of make them feel. Yeah, and several people felt that they were holding the group back, and it was working on their confidence to say, no, you're not. There's no such thing as progress. The progress you make is what you decide it to be, and if you enjoy it, great. And if you can get the boat moving up and down 100 meters, then that's success. So don't judge yourself against others. As long as you're enjoying it, that's the main thing. So it's trying to, and we'll probably see some of those come back in the future. We've got some people who've said they'll come do some coxing, which is great. So we'll keep in touch with them and keep them aware of what the club is doing.
If I can add to that, Paul, sorry to butt in.
No, don't worry about butting in, Richard.
I've also run a junior club, and I think one of the issues with juniors is that parents often use the Learn to Row courses to get them into the particular school, to give them a head start on selection when they take up with a school that does row. So you do have a lower conversion rate with the junior courses.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because anecdotally, I find that juniors tend to stay around if they're engaged it's just a different where your club is based and what your club is there to do. Matt, you've got a huge junior section at the league. How's that work with you? You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, we have indeed. I think we've got about 100 juniors currently. So, I mean, with us, we do a variety of different things, and we have a variety of different junior offers. So we do, Learn to Rows, junior Learn to Rows every year, and then we sort of going to say ferry them off in different directions depending on either what they want to do or what we think is right for them. So we have our sort of competition to performance track, and that's the traditional stuff, trying to go to Henley and win eventually. But we also have sort of what we call our club squad, which is twice a week, turn up if you want to, we'll get you out in a boat, no need to commit any more than that, and various different things that sit in between all of that. And we work with schools as well. We have a schools program to support things. We have a fairly good retention rate, I think, because we have quite hands-on dedicated coaches at the Lea, and we're quite fortunate to be able to fund a large proportion of that as well. It's interesting. One of the things that, listening to you talk about retention, we used to run I'm going to say 6-week summer learn to row course every year, probably got about 100 people through it. And this year we said we wanted to change that because we had a waiting list of 400 before lockdown, and I think it doubled over lockdown as people kind of walked past and saw us. And we thought there's no way we're going to get through all of this. We got lots of angry people who were missing out. So we split it in two. We started with a kind of 3-session taster course, as we called it. Get people out in a wreck boat 3 times, churn through, I guess, as many people as we can, and filter out, I guess, the people that just wanted to give rowing a go and probably never had any intention of sticking it out. And then longer kind of conversion courses, if you like, getting people either into our competition tracks or our rep tracks after that. And I think as a result, actually retention at the end of it, people that have gone all the way through, has been a lot higher because we've been able to, get rid of, for want of a better word, provide for those that weren't going to stick around, but give them a good opportunity and make some money off it, but also then find something that works for the rest. You've
facilitated somebody having a go at our sport, the sport that we all love, and then going, do you know what? I tried that. That looked awful lot more difficult than it was on the telly. So, but I've tried it. Yes, they may well come back to it as long as they have a good experience whilst doing those 3 sessions. Both you and Simon have mentioned it, and Richard, I'm going to come back to you with this because you mentioned it first. You've got all these people, and you, Matt, have got a casual drop-in service for certain groups, turn up 2 or 3 times a week. Simon, you've got people literally jumping out, hot seating boats because you've got that many people. Richard, how do you organise the same with your club where you don't know who's turning up from one week to the next or one day to the next?
Well, there's the answer. We do. And I'd go as far as to say it's almost more difficult to run a club on that basis than it is to run a regular crew, because we facilitated a system which was actually put in place by the captain of HSBC Bank, a boat club. And she designed an app whereby people can indicate their availability on any particular day. So I will post all the club sessions where we've got coaches available, and they will say, well, I'm available on that day and I want to row between 9 and 12 o'clock. And I or one of the other coaches will go through that a couple of days beforehand and start forming crews. Now, I wouldn't say all the crews are scratch crews, but you'll get the same people in the same boats, more or less. But you can make up crews, and by the end, but before each session, everyone will have a row, and they'll know because they'll be posted back what crew they're in, what boat they're in, what blades they're using, who's going to cox them, and who's going to coach them. But it takes an awful lot of organising, and if you're going to run it on that basis, you've got to be prepared to put the time in to organise it. But when it's done properly, then people enjoy knowing what they're going to get into, and they're not standing around like a junior football team waiting to be selected.
Yeah. Interesting. A question for Matt and Simon. Do you operate a similar sort of Google, for want of a better word, sign-up sheet? Or is it that your coaches, hard-working coaches that they are, look at the people they've got in front of them and select crews? Or is it a little bit more sophisticated than that?
It's a bit more sophisticated than that. One thing we did before we embarked on the row start course over the summer was having a clear idea of what we were going to do with the people who were going to carry on post the end of the course. So we knew exactly, we could signpost them immediately to what the options were. One thing we've done with the juniors over many years is have different squads, recognizing, based on age, and a bit like I think Matt said, they've got performance squads, we've got the club squads who want to row but not as competitively. And that worked very well with the juniors, particularly as we got towards exams, so that those in the performance squad could just drop back and become recreational rowers, because we had a junior recreational squad for those who wanted to just participate. And again, that was just to turn up. So we had a fairly good idea what the squad system was for the juniors, and we just lifted that and used elements of that when we did for the adults. So basically, anybody leaving the row start course who wanted to pursue the sport in a more going forward, we set up effectively an intermediate squad. So it's called transitional squad in the end, which we had 32 places available by putting an 8 out, and it was either going to be a mixed 8 or single sex 8, whatever worked. But effectively, it meant that we also then ran them on the Saturday and Sunday afternoons, which are the least popular times at the club. So it's getting those people into the habit of rowing at not the usual first thing in the morning or mid-morning or whatever. And we've kept the 2 boats running for each session on the Saturday and Sunday. And so we selected the first 32 who were coming in, who were the ones who were going to probably progress more quickly into the other squads. And as they drop out, it's that they're in that squad for anything from 2 weeks to 12 months. The aim is to try and push them through as quickly as possible, getting them into sweep, perfecting their sculling technique. And so we're now seeing a lot of those moving into the more established squads. So again, we just established the squad system. We had senior men, senior women, masters men, masters ladies, an intermediate crew for those who wanted to do some racing, but also just wanted to use it as a sport, as well as the recreational squad. And again, so the coaches know who's in their squads and are then organising their outings. But equally, members are encouraged, if they're struggling because of work or personal commitments, they can drop back from a squad for a few weeks, few months into another squad, but then move back up when they've got the time to commit to training as such. So again, it's trying to keep a degree of fluidity, a bit like Richard has done, but by moving away from this fixation that you're in a squad and you stay in that squad and don't move from that squad, it's I think helped us on the retention process and makes us a bit more of an open sport as such.
Yeah.
Paul, I think that one of the keys is, Matt was saying earlier, is the organisation of the boats and making sure those boats are fully used, because so many I've experienced in other clubs, a crew has almost ownership of that boat, the settings as they want it, and they don't want them mucked about with, and the coach won't let anyone else near them. Whereas, in a typical session for us, a double will go out in a 3-hour session. The double will go out with 4 different crews in it, and it stays on the water. But it takes organising, because they've got to turn up on time, 10 minutes before they're due to boat, be on the pontoon, ready to go. But you can do it if you are prepared to organise the boats. And make full use of them.
I mean, on that point, Richard makes it's very valid. Traditionally we used to have, the boat, certain boats were for certain crews. Now we operate on a more open system. I think most of our boats have now got shoes which can fit all. So there's that. All the boats are rigged the same, and nobody can change the rigging without specific agreement, so that it hasn't, it doesn't sort of need somebody to specifically maintain a boat and things like that. So again, it just helps the cohesion of the club more and gets the boats in greater use.
Matt, you've got lots of people. How do you cope with them all down there?
It's a constant challenge, I think. I mean, being big is great. And I always think that the problems it brings are just as a sort of sign of success rather than something to moan about, although I'm not sure that all of our members feel the same way. But it does bring challenges of keeping boats going, figuring out who can use it when, figuring out how to share the water and so on and so forth. But I think one of the big things that we've all learned to do is embrace flexibility and communicate with one another like a group of people that are in a community rather than old school hierarchical rowing club setup, I guess. And I think that's quite key. I mean, we are heavily volunteer led, and so I think the idea that we're not Virgin Active and we're a club that everyone has a stake in, I think has been quite key to us surviving, so to speak. But we're constantly having challenges. It's interesting hearing you talk about, Rich, the app that you're using. I'm thinking, how can we do the same? Because we're constantly struggling with how many people are going to turn up to a rec session on a Wednesday or Thursday morning. We don't really know until the time, and of course those people, some of them have been rowing for 6 months, some of them have been rowing for 6 years. What's the appropriate way to get them together? All we've managed to do so far is go with the flow, but something more sophisticated, I think, would be really interesting if we could.
I'm more than happy to share that with you or anyone else listening in. So,
all three of you have mentioned the word, probably a word 15 years ago that if you mentioned in a rowing club, flexibility of coming down at different times would have got you lynched by most of the committee members and all the rest. What, coming down after lunch to go rowing? This is unheard of. How have you changed this perception that we have to get up at 5:30 in the morning and row in the dark and all the rest of it and be open that way? I'll put it to you, Matt.
I mean, I think it's an interesting one, because I think if you ask a lot of people out there in the rowing club, why don't you broaden your offer? It would be the response would be something along the lines of, well, we're full, we can't cater for anyone else. And certainly we are full. If you look at a Saturday morning, 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock, we don't have any more space on the river. We have to really think about what we're doing. But if you come down in the week, particularly in lockdown, I've been working from the club a lot because it's a nice place to be. 9 till 5 p.m, very few people there. And I think for us, it's been growing use of the club outside of traditional rowing hours. And I think everyone's accepting that's something they need to be and want to be doing. And actually, the move to more flexible working patterns has helped that a bit. Some of the people that traditionally would not have been able to come any other time are now starting to go out and scull on a weekday afternoon between their work meetings or whatever it might be. I think that's the future, because actually we've got probably 5 times as much time. We could be 5 times fuller if we learned to keep all the balls up in the air.
What I found interesting, Paul, is that in the first summer, it all merges into one now, but in the summer of 2020, we found a lot of members who had only ever rowed in crew boats. And we started an initiative to get them into small boats and singles. And that has opened up so many opportunities for them to come down. One of our concerns was always safety. I mean, we happen to be quite a remote location. And so therefore we were always concerned that anyone going out either goes out buddied up with other people, were capable enough to look after themselves. So we went through a process of signing people off as out of hours rowers, so they weren't around during a club session, and we're quite strict on that. But a lot of people have put themselves forward for that, so they've gone from not being able to scull at all and being very nervous in a sculling boat. So we put them out in a single with floats on, and they progressed to singles without floats. And now a lot of them are coming down out of hours, jumping in a single and going off for 12k row on their own. And that's what's happened over the last 18 months. I would say probably as many as 30 of our members row in singles where they didn't do before. So that broadens the capacity of the club.
We saw something similar as well in that first period, and again it was just by using the bubble system effectively. And because people are going to go out in singles and doubles in family groups and things like that, that saw more people coming down and going out. So yeah, that's useful. In terms of how do we get people to use the boat club outside of the conventional hours? It's sheer bloody grit and determination, I think, because with the juniors, they're timetabled across the whole from 7:30 in the morning to about 5:30 at night on the Saturday and Sunday. So the juniors got into the habit of rowing at different times, and we also tried, because several of the juniors were quite active in other sports. We try and sort of recognise, well, they'll probably play in the morning, which are the traditional times. We'll try and schedule those in the afternoon. So again, it was just being a bit creative. And then in terms of when we first started trying to encourage people to row outside normal hours, it was well, if you want a decent boat, that's the only time you can have it. And again, people just got into the habit, and we're sort of now seeing people more going out, and it tends to be at the moment sort of single boats and doubles as such. During the week, we could use the club an awful lot more, but again, we've got groups of mums coming down after dropping the kids off at school and going out in a four, or singles, whatever. But there's still 9 till 5 where we could use the club an awful lot more, and that's what we're trying to do. With existing members, but also now, how do we get other parts of the community who traditionally wouldn't have considered it involved and engaged in that? So that's our next challenge.
You've done something at Trafford. You've got an apprentice coach, haven't you?
Yes, we have. The other thing we noticed throughout COVID was a number of the older juniors were looking to defer going to university. So the committee took the bold step of saying, right, first of all, we'll create an assistant coach position for the juniors, again, which is paid, and it was open to club members who got to doing their A-level year, who were looking to take a year out. So we appointed somebody for last year, and we've also appointed the person who will take over that role next year. That's working quite effectively because, again, they're very engaged in the club. But then the government very kindly put out something called the Kickstart scheme. And as Paul probably knows from bitter experience, if there's a scheme which has got some money at it there, I will try and find a way of altering the scheme or altering our role to get that money if I can, because it's free money. So on this one, we thought, well, we've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. At worst, we'd get another pair of eyes and ears for safety purposes on the bank. At best, we might get somebody who's interested in coaching and wants to progress in the sport. And so we found somebody. Young Johnny started with us in September. His contract is now due for renewal at the end of February, and I think we're looking at how we can try and retain him. But again, he was very useful. Again, he was a bit nervous, but we chucked him out in a scull so he could learn how to scull first, so he knew what the terms were. And again, he's building up. He's built the capability of coaching some of the younger juniors, but he's also gaining confidence at working with some of the more experienced juniors. And again, if the money's there, we'll try and keep it going, because for us it's worked. And he's part of the coaching squad.
Brilliant.
Well, sorry, again, butting in, Paul, what we found interesting is we found a lot of interest in spreading the load of coaching. I mean, a lot of people are put off by the idea of having to coach. We've got some 12 qualified coaches, but there's so many more that we sort of brought on to call it coaching, call it mentoring, and basically allowed them to go out and give less experienced members the benefit of their time, maybe in a double or whatever, or coxing, And so many of them come back and say, that's really useful for me. It taught me so much about my own rowing. And there's almost been a sort of a rush for people to have an opportunity to mentor other people. So again, that increases inclusiveness. You could find yourself, being taken out in a double with someone that's been in an international boat every now and again, but has never coached before. And it's a great movement. Yeah.
Matt,
the other thing we did as well, which I would imagine a lot of people will think we're crazy doing it, but again, it's worked for us. We decided, because again, we were struggling to get coaches out on a regular basis, because the club made quite a bit of money out of the COVID grants, to put something back into the members, we decided to recruit a paid coach for the senior men and for the senior women. And they do 4 hours on a Saturday, 4 hours on a Sunday. So they're coaching at the peak times. And we have noticed that because we've now got paid coaches, we're now attracting people from other clubs who previously wouldn't have been attracted to Trafford, because we can offer guaranteed coaching for crews in those respective squads. And I think the women's squad is now probably the largest squad in our club, because it's attracted people back into the sport from other clubs, because the coaching's there, and it's something again we're looking to continue because we can afford to do it.
Matt, how have you what have you used the club resource, or how have you used the club resource, as in those volunteers, those people that are coming down, as you say, at unusual times, because our work styles, patterns have changed since COVID, with a lot more people working from home. Have you managed to use those people to help coach or come on board?
We have. I mean, one of the big things we've actually managed to do, which we hadn't before, is run indoor rowing sessions over the past 12 months. And that's relied on people who can come down at a lunchtime or morning just before work and get 10 people on an ergo, teaching them the basics, getting them excited in a way that we just struggled to do, I think, pre-lockdown. And that's actually been done so far, mostly based on volunteers. Although going forwards, I think we'll look to formalise it and professionalise it, because it's a potential money spinner for the club. I mean, we have a constant challenge, I guess, of balancing the need and want for coaches at a vast scale, given the number of members we have. And I suppose the fact that a good way to attract them, as Simon said, is to spend money on it, because I think that there's a feeling that when you start to spend money, you can never go back, so to speak. And so currently, we're always tiptoeing a line, I think, between using volunteers to coach and spending on that. And currently, I think we're on the right side of it. But it's a big question: is that the way that clubs are going? And is it a key part of your investment, I guess, in keep securing your club's future? Yeah. And I think it is. But it's how quickly do you want to go down that path?
Interestingly, Kate, I see you've got your hand up. I've also can see your question in the chat. How did you? This is a question to all three of you, but I'll start with Matt. And I don't really want to turn this into a coaching discussion, because we will have a coaching discussion later on in the year. But how did your volunteer coaches react to somebody being paid for what they've been doing for many years? Matt?
I think it's mixed. I mean, the majority of our paid coaching is on the juniors side of the club, where I think there's quite a strong argument that without it, our junior section would not be as big as it is. There's safeguarding ratios and all these kind of things to think about. Paying for it is a sort of no-brainer. We've been lucky, I suppose, in that most of our junior coaching has been funded by grants from outside the club. So I suppose it's not taken anything away from people that might have otherwise had it, if you see what I mean. But there's a constant line that we tiptoe there, and we have to be very careful that those who aren't being paid for their time feel that they're getting what they want out of it. And I think there's a key thing, volunteers are volunteers and they do it because they want to and they're getting something from it, in the same way that rowers row in a particular squad or crew or whatever because they feel they're getting something from it. And so it's as much about the offer for them, what are you paying them in if it isn't money, so to speak? What reward are they getting out of it? What outcome? And listening to people, I suppose, is quite key. I'm not going to pretend for a moment we always get it right. It's we certainly don't try.
I think following up on that, Kate, I mean, there isn't a right or wrong answer on this one. It's something we're trying. If we get it wrong, we get it wrong. But that's like anything we've tried at the club. If the idea sounds good and it's got potential, we'll try it. But equally, we're brave enough at times to admit when it goes wrong that we'll stop it and do something else. But a bit like Matt, we've had for our juniors, the junior offering has been paid coaching for the last 10 years. And we're now up to 3 full-time paid coaches. We charge for that. Each junior pays £40 a month. So, the cost of the junior membership basically covers the cost of the paid coaching staff, plus national insurance, uniform and things like that. So that's worked, and our junior offering has been nothing else. However, we do recognise there are some out there. We do offer. There are some of our junior members who, because the parents' economic position, can't afford that. So we've got the ability to waive or freeze subs, and we've got 2 or 3 people who are not who get free membership on that basis. In terms of the seniors, yes, we're getting, we've got the 2 paid coaches, but we've still got the volunteer coaches coming down as well. And again, it's just making them feel welcome, explaining to them why we've done it. And that's the thing we did when we entered into it. We explained to them at the outset why we were doing it. They fully understood the rationale for doing it, because none of them could commit the hours on a weekly basis that the 2 paid coaches could. And it's also just recognizing occasionally, buying a few beers for them if you're in the pub or whatever, and just recognizing the role they do. And at the moment it's working, but we just don't know what's around the corner. So
Richard, how have you?
Easy one for us. We don't have any paid coaches.
So everybody is still all the coaching is done volunteer wise.
We've discussed it, but we've come to the conclusion that, we've managed to keep our membership fees down to a ridiculously low level, and we do it by doing everything ourselves voluntarily, including coaching. We don't wish to go to the point where we have to increase fees to pay coaches.
Do you think that hampers your offer to people, because you get used to going to a gym with a gym instructors and all the rest of it, that there isn't a paid professional on site?
No, I think we're getting some people that are very competitive, and they've come from other sports, triathletes and cyclists. They expect to row regularly and they get coaching. No one, I don't think anyone has turned around and said, well, it's time to employ a paid coach, and we're suffering as a result of it.
Yeah. All I would say is, as a volunteer coach, I was delighted when the club decided to have a paid coach, because that meant that I just did what they told me to do, and I didn't have to answer the 400 emails that I got, or get copied into the 800 emails that the squads all used to send around. So for me, it was that I thought it was the best thing ever.
Tell me about it.
I think we've all suffered from that.
To be really pragmatic about it, we found that there is funding available for that kind of thing, and particularly for kids, and we should pursue it because it frees up money elsewhere to spend on other things we want. We've been lucky that we've been able to go down that route, but there's a constant challenge. What if that funding dries up? You have to rethink, but that's part of the fun, right?
I'm very conscious we've got about 13 minutes left because I know that two of our panelists are under pain of death, that dinner will be served at 8:02. So I'd love to hear from anybody on the call if they've got any questions. Please, this is your opportunity. Whilst we wait for the questions to come through, what's the future for you, Matt, at the Lea? What's the next stage to engage with your local community?
I mean, for us, it's about, I think, increasing the diversity of our club. So as long as I've been around, we've been what I'd say is quietly inclusive, in that actually I think we've got about a 50-50 gender split. You know, we have all sorts of different types of people represented within the club. And Sally Lawrence, our late secretary, who many of you will have come across, was a big champion of that behind the scenes. She got our local Jewish ladies community involved, all of that kind of thing. But what we, I think, realised over the lockdown period, and I think the nation has realised as well, is that perhaps despite all of that, the representation of different ethnic groups within our club didn't match, I think, our local community. You know, we're a very diverse part of London, and the profile of our membership wasn't so much. So our big thing is tackling that, and I'm a believer in the social reasons behind it, but I think even the most cynical in our club see it as a good thing, because the more kinds of people you get into the club, the more likely you are to find your Henley winner. So it's a no-brainer for everyone. And for us, we're trying all sorts of different things. The big thing that's been successful for us, I think, is what we're calling sort of drop-in sessions. So we've had, you know, people have either with indoor rowers and a tent on the bank at our regatta, or wreck boats just there on the bank, grabbing people, saying, jump in, have a go, we'll teach you the basics, see if you want to come back. We've also sort of engaged through sort of friends of friends of friends of people at the club, a group of young, diverse people, I think, from the area, and got them in the boat. And what we found actually is that firstly, they've all loved it because the sport's great after all. But secondly, it's actually increased passers-by's interest. There's quite a good story on our website from a guy, Shalom, who took part in one of our Learn to Rows. He's a black man, and many of the others in the boat with him that day were also black. And he said people were walking past, getting their phones out to take pictures because they couldn't believe that there were black people rowing. And that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
You know? So for us, it's all about that kind of thing. It's about finding other ways to get people involved in the sport beyond paying £200 for a Learn to Row every summer, which only attracts, I suppose, a certain kind of person.
Yeah. Richard, you've got a as you said, a membership that comes from all over, you know, the south.
Yeah.
How do you engage with the local community with your club?
We've always we have the Goring and Streatley Regatta, which has always been a community regatta. We run it every other year, although we're now considering running it on an annual basis. And that's always been a good recruiting ground because it's not a competitive regatta. It's local people forming crews, and we teach them how to row before the event over a 5-week period, and they go out and bash it out on the day. They splash around and they may float over the finish line after a few minutes. But it's again a good recruiting ground. I think from the last one, which was very much a dumbed down regatta because of the lockdown, we still had some 20 members join as a result of that regatta. So yeah, we'd like to sort of be in touch with the community, and we're also our initiatives over the next year. We're reaching out to adaptive rowing, trying to expand our facility there, and maybe get a grant for that, and also reaching out to a charity called Sport in Mind, and where we feel that some people would benefit from some calming time on the water, where they've been through stressful moments, being not locked, but being in their flats for too long. So we're trying to broaden our reach there.
Simon, same question for you. You touched on it earlier.
First one is diversity. We're moving in that direction, but we could do an awful lot more. But again, we're beginning to attract people in who previously wouldn't have used sport or used rowing as their sport. Our gender mix, we're 60-40, I think, to women to men, which is good given where we were a few years ago. So once we've got diversity underway, the next thing for us to get into the community is to use indoor rowing to be able to take it out to other groups who maybe haven't tried it. And rather than them coming to us, we'd like to try it to us taking the equipment to them and making it a fun activity which is open to all and doesn't cost them anything. And then I think the other thing we'd like to try and do is do a community event. And we're currently looking at, could we use a version of the bumps that Cambridge use, for instance, very well each year to go out and create community teams, train them up, and use that, because the canal is quite restricting, but the bumps I think would work on the canal. So that's where we're looking at that, and it's then hopefully drawing people in to see that rowing is fun, rowing is enjoyable, and it's a good place to be.
Yeah. One more thing, Paul, I'll add to that. We call ourselves a boat club. What we've done over recent years is that we've sort of expanded the fleet to include other vessels. So, we have a social membership, and people pay for a social membership, then come down. They can go out in Canadian canoes. We've got a couple of paddle boards that they can go out on. There's even a couple of punts they can go out on, and a couple of kayaks. So that has encouraged families to come down, for parents to go out with their kids. And as a result, then the parents have sort of started up saying, well, we'll try rowing. So that's another way to reach out to sort of a wider family membership.
With buying, let's say, other water sports equipment, I must admit the stand-up paddle boards are very much more flexible, in the sense that you can put rowing rigs on some of the boards, so you can have a piece of equipment that is has dual purpose. Yeah. Matt, I could see you nodding away. Is that something you've done down at the Lea or looked at?
No, it's not. It's something that would be really interesting. So, I mean, we've got a very big and successful kayak canoeing paddleboarding centre literally just down the canal from us. But I think it's a great idea. Think of yourself as more than a rowing club. You're a way for people to enjoy the water. That's a great idea.
I'm very conscious of time. It's 5 to 8, and first of all, I'd like to thank my expert panel for giving up their time this evening. If anybody's got any questions afterwards, please feel free to drop me the questions and I will pass them on. All three of our panelists are happy to have you contact them direct. So if you need to get hold of them, please drop me an email and I will pass on their emails to you. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for giving up your time. I know we could all be down our own rowing clubs, which is probably where we prefer to be rather than on a Zoom call. Thank you very much indeed, and good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night all.
Cheers all.
Cheers all. Thanks all.
Thank you.